be. And niggas trying to take my life away. I put a hole in a nigga for fucking with me.
What's up, YouTube? Been plugging away at the LS S14 for the last week or so, and let me show you the progress that I've made. So if you didn't see the last videos, I picked up this LS swapped S14 from a local guy that did the swap a few years ago and never finished the project. He got it running and driving, kind of, and then stripped the interior for a roll cage that he never installed. So I had to yank this motor and transmission out on the lift a few times. I basically just dropped the subframe and everything from the bottom, so that way I could lift the body up and down, so I could reposition it. So the engine, when I got the car, was tilted way far back like that, and it was a little bit too far forward. And so the transmission needed to go up because the transmission was pointing down and the driveline was pointing up. So I got all that situated. I got the driveline and transmission at a good angle, so it's pretty much straight now. You can see I couldn't even build an exhaust before because the headers were pointing at the ground, and now they're going straight. And then I got my exhaust built, just a 2-to-1, pretty simple. And the previous owner also did some clearancing for this Colorado AR5 transmission, but there was just a big gaping hole everywhere in the tunnel. So I made a nice block off plate for the tunnel and then bought a universal shift boot to mount to the block off plate. So it's all nice and clean now. I also got the LS ECU mounted. You can see I just built a strap that bolts to the factory metal bracket for the glove box and tucked all the wires up nicely. And then I've got the dongle for tuning. There was also a power bulk on the floor here, so I was able to mount that behind this trim piece and get that all tucked out of the way. I also put all the rest of the interior back in. You can see it's very dirty. It needs to be cleaned, and there's no carpet, which I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. Got the double cage radio delete panel mounted back in. Got the trim around the steering wheel. And I also clearanced this for the hydro. So I got a pull-up style hydro because this car did not come with an e-brake at all. After getting the engine and transmission all mounted last week, I did finally go take it for a drive and noticed the brake calipers were seizing. I did a 5-lug swap and re-drilled the factory rotors to 5-lug, and then finally got to drive the car and realized that the calipers were pretty much all toast. So since I had to re-bleed the brakes anyways to install the hydro, I figured I might as well do a brake upgrade. So I got Z32 rotors, front and rear, with the brake line adapters for the Z32 calipers. And the calipers should be in the mail today, so I can install the new brakes and the hydro. I went to Excessive and got the custom lines made for the hydro setup, so I can install that and the new brakes and then bleed the system, and she should be pretty good. Then I can go for another test drive. So while I'm waiting for those calipers to show up, I do have the last piece of the puzzle, kind of, for the 2JZ Chaser that showed up in the mail already. I do have some status reclining seats and a full carbon status steering wheel to put in it for the interior, which doesn't need to be done, but it would be cool. But one of the things I did wrong when I built this car, I did a big brake kit from a Lexus 460, I believe. You can see those nice big juicy calipers and rotors, front and rear. And I ordered the brackets from a company XAT to do the big brake kit that adapted these calipers to the X100 chassis. And I thought just the standard PMU e-brake shoes would work. And I guess I didn't read that correctly, because when I got it all together, brakes worked amazing and everything was fine, but e-brake would not lock. So I reached out to XAT and they went ahead and let me know that I screwed up and I was supposed to actually order the PMU e-brake shoes for the X100 that are specifically made for the Supra rotors, which I have now. Here's the part number so you can see. You can see on there it says it's for the X100 for the Supra 2-pot rear rotors. I'm gonna go ahead and move Jessica's E92 out and back the Chaser in and jack it up and swap out these e-brake shoes right now. And here you can see the difference between the standard X100 pads and the ones made for the Supra rotors. You can see the standard ones have the normal amount of contact surface pad on them, and the ones for the Supra rotors have lots more. So that takes up that extra space inside the larger rotor housing. All right, I got the Chaser all done. The new PMU pads work great. Went for a test drive and took a couple pulls to get them to warm up and kind of self-adjust. And then after that, pulled it a couple times and she locks right up. So it's got a functioning e-brake and a drift brake if somebody wants to use it for that. Also, as soon as I got back from my test drive, a couple packages were waiting for me. And those are the new PARC Shop Max Z32 calipers for the LS14. So I'm gonna get to installing all the brakes and the hydro on the S14 now. But I also probably forgot to give you guys an update on the VQ Villains S13. I did get the gas tank completely resealed. It said to let it cure for at least 4 days. And after 4 days, I actually installed it back in the car and put the exhaust and driveline back in, along with changing a couple minor things that needed to be messed with. But I haven't put gas in it, so it's been a week now, and I'm just gonna wait till probably sometime this weekend or whenever I run to fill up a gas can and I can drive the thing. I'll get it off the lift, but I'm just not in a hurry right now because this is already on jack stands and I don't need the lift for anything else. So I'm gonna let that thing sit and cure for as long as possible. And that way the tank should be good to go. For now, I got the rotors already high heat painted so they don't rust in the centers. And I'm gonna go ahead and yank these factory brakes off, toss them in the garbage. All right, I got the Z32 front brakes on and the Z32 rear brakes. So we got the PARC Shop Max calipers, we got factory style rotors from the auto parts store, and ISR conversion lines. Same thing in the rear. So now before I bleed it, I gotta bolt in that hydro that I built the mount for, and then install the new lines that I picked up today. And once I get those all installed, then I can bleed the brakes and it'll have a functional hydro and functional brake upgrade. Getting there. Then I can go test drive it again. So I bolted the hydro in and I went ahead and attached the line that goes to the rear and then fed that through the hole in the tunnel. So that way I can get under the car and route that to the back brakes. But I went ahead and disconnected the line coming from the front, from the master cylinder, because the way these lines are made, you can't really clock them. So I had a 90 installed to come off the brake master cylinder. So to make sure I have the routing correct in the engine bay to get away from the header on the motor, I'm gonna go ahead and just feed this piece to the master cylinder, tighten it up. Then I can start snaking it around and get through the firewall, and I'll have a better chance of clocking it onto the hydro with the banjo bolt than I would trying to fight it against the master cylinder. So I'm gonna hook it up to the master cylinder and feed it through the firewall. All right, you can see the hydro fitting coming off the master, wraps around, goes up where the other brake line used to go, comes through the firewall, tucks under the dash, comes out, and my lengths that I measured were perfect. So those are both tight now. Now I need to crawl under the car and route that one to tee in right there. So that'll be one rear brake, that'll be the other rear brake, and this will be from the hydro. It's the next day. I went and played soccer this morning, drove the R34. It's driving amazing as usual, lots of thumbs up. Super fun driving that car on the street. I did drive the S14 last night after I was done messing around with it, and it drives great. It's super smooth. The coilovers, the adjustable arms, the Z32 brake upgrade, the hydro, everything works, and it drives really nice. A couple things I did notice though that are going to be next on my list to tackle. The fans, I'm not quite sure if they were kicking on. It got up to like 210 and stayed there. So I need to figure out why it's getting up so high and if the fans are working. And one thing I did notice is the steam port is blocked off right there for the heads in the front. So I did get a little barb fitting. So I think what I'm gonna do, what I've done in the past that worked pretty well, is I just drilled and tapped the upper radiator neck housing and then put the barb in there, and then I could put a jumper hose from the steam port to the barb. I could also put the barb in the housing behind the thermostat and just run a little bit longer of a hose. Or I could also probably have Shane weld an aluminum barb onto the radiator itself and just run the steam port straight to there. This seems to be the easiest thing to do. And like I said, I did this before on my LS and my S15 back in the day, and it worked really well. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. The other thing I did notice, which was kind of funny, is these two gauges. They got the water temp and the oil pressure. The gauges work fine, but when it was dark out when I drove it last night, and when I had the lights on, they would just peg all the way over. And then when I would shut the lights off, they would read normal readings. So I need to figure out why there's a power or ground issue with the way those are wired up. Like I said before, the guy never really drove the car or finished it by any means. So a lot of this stuff he wouldn't even know until he got to this point in the build. So yeah, the center console came out nice. The automatic shifter trim is cut around the shifter, and I can shift through the gears without hitting anything. And the hydro's in a good spot, and it locks up really good. So yeah, I'm gonna get to installing this steam port. Well, this isn't rocket science, but I'll go ahead and explain how to do it. So you're gonna wanna take the throttle body off to get your tools in here to tap this, and make sure you have a shop vac. So you hold the shop vac next to the drill bit while you're drilling the hole. That way none of the shavings go down in the hole. Probably wouldn't be a catastrophe if a couple pieces went down because it's just the cooling system, but it's obviously better to avoid that. And then once you get the hole drilled out, you just get a NPT tap that's the right size for the barb fitting you're putting on, and then do the same thing. Use the shop vac with one hand while you tap it with the other hand, and then throw some thread tape to seal up the NPT barb fitting and bolt her down. And then I had some line laying around with some clamps, so I ran a jumper hose going from one to the other. Also, so behind the throttle body, you got that there and that there, and both of them had Both of those had caps on them that were completely dried out and cracked and falling off. So I'm going to go ahead and put some new caps on those and make sure those are sealed up. And then I can throw the throttle body back on. Another problem that I found last night when I went and drove it was the power steering was leaking. And it's because the fitting on the pump right there that goes to the adapter that goes from the pump to this line, it has a crush washer on there, and it looked like it was sealing, but upon further inspection I took the adapter off and the crush washer off, and then put the fitting on by itself, and it was bottoming out with a fair amount of space. So even though the crush washer seemed snug, I don't think it was actually crushing it. So I went ahead and took that fitting off last night and shaved it down like 2 millimeters, and then put the crush washer back on and tightened her up, and now she seems to have power steering that's not leaking all over the place. I'm gonna get these barbs blocked off behind the throttle body and put the throttle body back on and see how she does. Well, the second real test drive went better than the first one yesterday. The car actually runs and drives great, and it seems to be holding operating temperature pretty good, but the fans are not kicking on. I know when Oscar was over here the other day messing with the tune a little bit, he did get them to kick on, so I don't know if I screwed up something when I pulled the harness off and put the harness back on, or a fuse popped or what, but the fans are definitely not kicking on. So instead of hovering around 180, it's hovering around 210. So not a huge deal, still ran and drove great, but I do need to figure out why the fans are not working and fix that. Shane actually just gave me a call too, because at the last Villains event, he had one of Nate's S14 doors got damaged, and he's on his way to Salem to pick up a replacement door, and he's gonna go ahead and paint it. So he gave me a call and said if I rip off my gray door, that guy that got damaged from Final Bout, he'll go ahead and shoot that door in the morning when he shoots the other door. So I'm gonna go ahead and rip this door off so he can throw some brown color on it tomorrow morning. If you guys have been following the Pat's Acres PARCDrift stuff, then you would know that I recently got my permit application denied. I did pass 5 out of the 6 qualifying factors. They still denied it on one of those factors. Not the end of the road though. I did file my appeal. So the appeal hearing is going to be in September. I did request that it be an in-person hearing so that the community would have a chance to show up. But by procedure, this one is Zoom only. And then if I fail this decision, the next appeal would be to LUBA, which is the Oregon State Land Board of Attorneys. And that one is supposed to be an in-person hearing. So hopefully it doesn't go that far. If it does, I guess what I'm trying to say is get ready to show up if it does come to that. But otherwise, I'll be posting updates as the September hearing gets closer, so that you guys are welcome to join in on the Zoom call. And I think you can give your input, or you can just watch and see how it goes. But for now, you guys know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more content, and I'll see you next time. Peace.